And it still haunts me to this day. It was a shriek. Yeah, I grew up in this really normal, beautiful, middle-class family. My father was 35 years old. He was the breadwinner of the family. My mom was a homemaker. That was the role in the 1970s. She stayed at home, raised the kids. I don't know if you can relate with this, but my dad was my hero. And not everybody has that kind of dad, but my dad was my hero. He was a hockey coach. He was a baseball coach. He was the kind of man that you wanted to be your best for. And I felt in his shadow I could do or be anything. And I felt loved and accepted. In August 1975, I remember the night the priest from the local parish came and knocked on our door, and I remember because I remember the sound that my mom made. And it still haunts me to this day. It was a shriek, a horror. Because all of a sudden our world completely turned inside out, literally in one day. What happened within a year is Mom remarried, and the man that she hooked up with was a violent, abusive alcoholic. And so I went from a message of you're loved and you can do and be anything to you're stupid, you're dumb, you'll never amount to anything. And I was 8, and honestly I didn't know how to process that. I began to believe lies about who I was and how I fit into the world. Shortly after my 9th birthday, an opportunity presented itself to do drugs for the first time. By the time I was 15 years old, I was non-compliant at home. I grew an extra 2 feet. Not so good for my stepfather. There was a lot of tension between him and I, and he paid the bills, so I had to go. For me, it was jumping out of the pot and straight into the fire. At 15 years old, I was on my own. Just try and get through another sunset. At 16 years old, I began getting in trouble with the legal system. I remember going back out to the street, completely broken as a human being, walking up East Hastings with the pouring rain. And I said to myself, how did I get here? I'm a good kid from a good family. How did I end up in this much trouble? What ended up happening is I remember the day. It was a beautiful sunny day, just like today. See, back in those days, I was a liar, a thief, a cheat, and a mooch. And I landed in this park. And I saddled up beside this guy sitting at a bus stop named Gus because he had a cigarette. And he gave me a cigarette. He was a really nice guy. And he gave me a couple bucks, too. But he gave me something more. The entire time I was sitting there talking to him, Gus said to me, he says, you know, Joe, he says, there's more to you than you can see. He said, but life it's kind of dirtied your windows, and so the light doesn't get in, and your light doesn't get out. You could go on to do extraordinary things because you're a real bright guy. I remember when he was talking to me and he was speaking his truth into my life, I was looking over my shoulder for someone else. Because what stood before him did not align with his words. But he said to me, he said, there's more to you than you can see. And I remember my heart absolutely sank. For years of my life, I didn't take accountability for my own actions. I blamed society, I blamed my stepfather, I blamed everybody else except me. And that kept me from actually taking responsibility for my own behavior in my own life. It deflected it. But on that moment, the miracle happened for me. And the miracle was that I became teachable, I became pliable, and I became willing to do just about anything. You know, one of the things that I know today is that discontentment is the catalyst of change. And what I mean by that is oftentimes not until we're backed into a corner where we become teachable, where we become willing to do something different. But you see, possibility always exists. It never goes away. It's always present. Even at my lowest point, the possibility of transformation was there. I started to flower, I started to come out, and I started to do incredibly well. I went from a kid pushing a shopping cart, just try and get through another sunset, to being on the cover of Canadian Business. Because inside every single one of us is infinite possibility. And I found myself sleeping under this bridge, and I was one of those kids that would go around the city every morning, and I'd collect cans, and I would go down, and I would trade those cans in, and I would try and stay 6 hours ahead and do anything I could to stave off withdrawal.